In the writing of Pope Francis called Laudato Si, we read here of the suggestions of the Pope to make a change, to transform this world using the powers of the land to effect these changes. Let us digest this little by little, my brethren. Starting from paragraph 3 of this book, it says, more than 50 years ago, with the world teetering on the brink of nuclear crisis, Pope St. John XXIII wrote an encyclical which not only rejected war but offered a proposal for peace. He addressed his message Pacem in Terris to the entire Catholic world and indeed to all men and women of goodwill. As we read these passages, we are made to understand, my brethren, that we are on the right track of interpreting the prophecies and its fulfillment. The Pope wills to advocate peace not only for the Catholics, but for all of the people. That was John the 23rd. But Pope Francis adds to his own agenda as he continues in the book, saying here in paragraph 5, saying, every effort to protect and improve our world entails profound changes in lifestyles, models of production and consumption, and the established structure of power which today governs societies. A change is then introduced to us. A necessary change in order to set the world in its right order. This is what the man of sin has found necessary to be done. And not only was it the Pope, but even those outside of the Church have made their contributions to the Roman Catholic Church to unify in making this happen. Now it says here in paragraph 7, these statements of the Pope echo the reflections of numerous scientists, philosophers, theologians, and civic groups, all of which have enriched the Church's thinking on these questions. Outside the Catholic Church, other churches and Christian communities, and other religions as well, have expressed deep concern and offered valuable reflections on issues which all of us find disturbing. Among the list of those voices who have contributed to this issue and the change that is necessary to better this world and save it from its destiny of ruin was the Ecumenical Patriarchate. It explains here in paragraph 9, saying, at the same time, Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew has drawn attention to the ethical and spiritual roots of environmental problems, which require that we look for solutions not only in technology but in a change of humanity. He asks us to replace consumption with sacrifice, greed with generosity, wastefulness with a spirit of sharing, and asceticism which entails learning to give and not simply to give up. A change of humanity was necessary, according to their words. And it was not merely a change of our behaviors and habits to make ourselves more of eco-friendly people. But the Ecumenical Patriarch was insinuating more to it than just that. The root of the expression was for a change to happen. And this change is to disregard humanity's existing rights of freedom of religion in order to make a change that will be enforced universally. The propaganda in the last days is of peace and safety. And these two matters are the points that the man of sin plans to manipulate. We add here in paragraph 14, saying, the urgent challenge to protect our common home includes a concern to bring the whole human family together to seek a sustainable and integral development, for we know that things can change. Stated simple and clear, the man of sin has primed our minds to prepare to unite with each other and to prepare for a change that is to happen. Not merely a change in nature or a change of circumstance brought about by doing good things to nature and society, but rather a blatant change that will be enforced for the whole world to keep. This is how safety was to be advocated. A safety from destruction. An assumption that in this world that God has declared to be bound to ruin is a world that humanity can save. And that is something, my brethren, that we know only Satan alone would plant in the minds of the people in order to erase from the minds of the people their faith in the words of God. Now, we read that here in the book of Ezekiel chapter 13, verse 10 and 22. It says, even because they have seduced my people, saying peace, and there was no peace, and one built up a wall, and lo, others stopped it with untempered mortar. Because with lies ye have made the heart of the righteous sad, whom I have not made sad, and strengthened the hands of the wicked, that he should not return from his wicked way, by promising him life. And we add here in the book of Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 4 and 11. It says, how long shall the land mourn, and the herbs of every field wither, for the wickedness of them that dwell therein? The beasts are consumed, and the birds, because they said, he shall not see our last end. They have made it desolate, And being desolate, it mourneth unto me. The whole land is made desolate, because no man layeth it to heart. This is the proclamation of those who are unbelieving to God. They will exist in this world assuming that they will last a long time, and that even this world is something that will exist for a long time, even for eternity. So long that they have formulated plans to renew this world the longer that it gets, believing that this world is evolving, my brethren. That is the most false conception of the world. This world, coming from the Stone Age, the evolutionary period until we have reached this time, is a world that is constantly progressing. That is what they teach. The Pope has spoken of that assumption, and that is even the doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church. In paragraph 18, it says, "The continued acceleration of changes affecting humanity and the planet is coupled today with a more intensified pace of life and work, which might be called rapidification. Although change is part of the working of complex systems, the speed with which human activity has developed contrasts with the naturally slow pace of biological evolution." My brethren, this is something that we must address clearly. Evolution is unbiblical. To think that the world is a world that is constantly evolving is a great blasphemy against our God, a great rejection and a form of apostasy from our God, refusing to believe as what the Holy Bible has spoken. Man was made in its greatest capability, strength, talent, life, force, and glory at the beginning of this world. Time passed, and humanity has degraded in stature, intellect, and ability, and in moral powers because of sin. The way that this world works is that from its prime, from the time that it was made perfect, it was slowly rotting down. Our time is not the time of the greatest intellect, my brethren. Make no mistake. None of us existing in our time is intelligent enough to compare to those who have existed first in this world. We are only reaping the wisdom that has been established during their times. These airplanes and cars and technology are but an unfortunate result of the loss of the life force, the stature, and the strength of the people of this world. Why? Do you think that because people were walking in the past that they were dumb compared to us? You are the dumb one, my brethren, to believe that. Do you think that walking in staffs make them primitive and are inferior to our wisdom? That is where you are wrong. All of these inventions in our time are a result of the lack of life force, a lack of capability, a lack of capacity to perform daily tasks without the need for any instrument to aid us greatly. We're merely making high-tech wheelchairs and transportation because we have no life force, no strength to walk those miles as they were capable of walking before. We are a rotting generation, my brethren, a generation of degeneration. And that is something that we must be mature to accept. You and I are weak and frail and incapable. We are a degraded version of humanity, my brethren. This is our share of our groaning. However, the Roman Catholic Church, in all their blasphemies, just keep adding to their lies that even this world, starting with a bang, then came to a process of evolution. That is why the accounts of Noah and the book of Genesis are but mere stories to them, and no longer the fundamental doctrine and the truth that the Catholics uphold. They were not reality to them. For the man of sin has spoken so. Let us read in the same book, in paragraph 70, saying, "We see this in the story of Noah, where God threatens to do away with humanity because of its constant failure to fulfill the requirement of justice and peace. I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them." These ancient stories, full of symbolism, bear witness to a conviction which we today share, that everything is interconnected and that genuine care for our own lives and our relationships with nature is inseparable from fraternity, justice, and faithfulness to others. Nothing in the book of Genesis, especially in the accounts of the creation, even until the time of Noah, was symbolic. It was a narration of the beginning of this world and the beginnings of our patriarchs. What we could read is what happened. That is something that is supposed to stand as a substance of our foundation, but the Roman Catholic Church is crazy enough to declare that the very first books of the Bible is but a mere symbolism. We can add of other books to prove this point more and more and nail it to the ground that the Catholics believe it as their doctrine. But even those words coming from the Pope himself, the man of sin, are enough to understand that they are preaching a delusion to the people. It's your choice now, my brethren, to continue in a church who preaches that we came from monkeys and a big bang out of nowhere, or to believe in a God of creation. Now, we continue with the presentation. The Pope did not end with just giving us reasons to believe that this world can be saved and we can do something about it with our own power. The man of sin stepped further to declare that this will one day become a law for the whole world to obey. We read in paragraph 15, saying, "In light of this reflection, I will advance some broader proposals for dialogue and action which would involve each of us as individuals and also affect international policy." Now, this is where they begin to explain how they are to do it. We read in paragraph 64, it says, "I would like from the outset to show how faith convictions can offer Christians and some other believers as well ample motivation to care for nature and for the most vulnerable of their brothers and sisters. If the simple fact of being human moves people to care for the environment of which they are a part, Christians, in their turn, realize that their responsibility within creation and their duty towards nature and the Creator are an essential part of their faith." This is the first thing that the man of sin implants in the mind. We have a responsibility within creation and a duty to our Creator, and that this is an essential part of your faith and my faith. Now, our duty to our Creator was clearly written in the Bible, and that is to worship on the Sabbath of the fourth commandment, God showing Himself as the Creator of this world. The seventh-day Sabbath, or Saturday, that fact was presented as well by the man of sin as he speaks here in paragraph 71. It says, "Through Noah, who remained innocent and just, God decided to open a path of salvation. In this way, He gave humanity the chance of a new beginning. All it takes is one good person to restore hope. The biblical tradition clearly shows that this renewal entails recovering and respecting the rhythms inscribed in nature by the hand of the Creator. We see this, for example, in the law of the Sabbath. On the seventh day, God rested from all His work. He commanded Israel to set aside each seventh day as a day of rest, a Sabbath." The Pope connects the importance of our responsibility to our Creator to the day of worship. And that is something that we have studied in the past. However, the change here is presented, and an obvious one at that. Because after telling us that it is a part of our responsibility to nature to keep a day holy and rest on that day so that nature could as well rest, then they immediately introduced, after saying that we need to rest, the false day of rest, the spurious Sabbath, the requirement for saving the world one day. Now, we need to rest on Sunday to save this world, to put it shortly. That is what it says. The man of sin has spoken of that here in paragraph 237, saying, "On Sunday, our participation in the Eucharist has special importance. Sunday, like the Jewish Sabbath, is meant to be a day which heals our relationships with God, with ourselves, with others, and with the world. Sunday is the day of resurrection, the first day of the new creation, whose first fruits are the Lord's risen humanity, the pledge of the final transfiguration of all created reality. Rest opens our eyes to the larger picture and gives us renewed sensitivity to the rights of others. And so the day of rest, centered on the Eucharist, sheds its light on the whole week and motivates us to greater concern for nature and the poor." This is what the papacy is to educate the people to believe and practice, starting from the Catholics and to the rest of the world through the ecumenical movement. However, the man of sin has stated his dissatisfaction with just making it an education. It must become a law. And once it becomes a law, he knows that the people will not be motivated to obey the law unless there is a reward, an incentive, or especially in this case, my brethren, a death threat according to prophecy. We read of the words of the Pope here in paragraph 211, saying, "Yet this education, aimed at creating an ecological citizenship, is at times limited to providing information and fails to instill good habits. The existence of laws and regulations is insufficient in the long run to curb bad conduct, even when effective means of enforcement are present. If the laws are to bring about significant, long-lasting effects, the majority of the members of society must be adequately motivated to accept them and personally transformed to respond." That motivation to make the world obey this day of rest and this day of worship is what we can read in the prophecy in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verse 16 back to 15. It says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed." Under the excuse of protecting the world, and even to keep this world safe, as safety will be a propaganda in the last days of this world, the Roman Catholic Church will then finally make use of this opportunity and excuse, this alibi, to establish the false Sabbath as the day of worship for the people to obey universally, under the motivation of being killed if you don't. The man of sin has declared itself as the one to wave the banner of the propaganda not only of peace, but also of safety. We read that in paragraph 79, where it says, "The work of the church seeks not only to remind everyone of the duty to care for nature, but at the same time, she must above all protect mankind from self-destruction." Now, on September 2020, efforts were made by the Pope to let the world understand that it is now high time to act in order to save the world. In the article of the Associated Press, this is what has been reported of the words and intentions of the Pope. Now it says here, "The COVID-19 pandemic has shown how the earth can recover if we allow it to rest, and must spur people to adopt simpler lifestyles to help a planet groaning under the constant demand for economic growth," Pope Francis said Tuesday. In his latest urgent appeal to help a fragile environment, Francis also renewed his call for the cancellation of the debts of the most vulnerable countries. Such action would be just, he said, since rich countries have exploited poorer nations' natural resources. Here we notice that the words of the Pope is made to sway the world and control it by his words. For it was a universal advice that he gave to cancel all the debts of the poorer nations of this world. This is an evident show of the power of the papacy still bearing sway in our most present time right now. The article continues, "In some ways, the current pandemic has led us to rediscover simpler and sustainable lifestyles," Francis said in a written message. "Already, we can see how the earth can recover if we allow it to rest. The air becomes cleaner, the waters clearer, and animals have returned to many places from where they have previously disappeared," he wrote. "The pandemic has brought us to a crossroads. And that crossroad, my brethren, is a crossroad leading to the ruin of many of those who will keep the Sabbath of the fourth commandment, for it is an excuse they have made, that in order to save this world, we must bring a law to change and motivate the people even at the expense of a few righteous men who keep the laws of God." For the last document that we will be reading, my brethren, we rehearse the plan of the papacy in bringing this mark of the beast to the foreheads and hands of the people of this world. We cite of the Book of the Pope, Dies Domini, page 75-76. In this encyclical, he declares, "Therefore also, in the particular circumstances of our own time, Christians will naturally strive to ensure that civil legislation respects their duty to keep Sunday holy. In any case, they are obliged in conscience to arrange their Sunday rest in a way which allows them to take part in the Eucharist, refraining from work and activities which are incompatible with the sanctification of the Lord's Day, with its characteristic joy and necessary rest for spirit and body." My brethren, we rest these points of evidences to the fulfillment of the prophecies to your minds. And we implore that you make a fitting decision to remove ourselves from these churches and these teachings and come back to the old paths that God has proclaimed to be the way to salvation.